When my old friend Adam from school inherited his family farm, he sold off most of the land and kept working it as a hobby farm. Nothing serious. A couple of sheep who were more like pets than livestock, chickens, and a huge garden where he was able to pursue his interest in growing his own produce in a massive vegetable patch. I agreed to house sit the place for a few nights earlier this year, while Adam drove to a neighboring city to visit family. Usually the farm was self-sufficient for a few days at a time, but the weather had been warm, and he needed his precious veggies watered regularly. He had also recently adopted a Kelpie pup, Red. Adam's family were in an apartment with a strict no pets policy. Hence, Adam called in a favor with me to look after his place and the dog. I should explain at this point that Adam has always had a cheeky sense of humor. One of the ways this has manifested itself has been the intentional tacky decoration of his garden, cultivated to inspire wonder in kids and repulsion in adults. The town garbage trucks don't visit isolated properties like his, so the council instead gives him a tip pass to enable him to dispose of his own rubbish. At the same time, he can't resist picking up treasures from the dump for his garden. Gnomes with snapped fishing rods and paint-chipped faces, rusted street signs, old car parts, and even a horse from a Ferris wheel, missing both ears and a leg. He also builds his own scarecrows. This part I always found less amusing. He pieces together old, broken shop mannequin parts, like Dr. Frankenstein. He takes an arm from one, a head from another, until he has a complete figure. They never quite fit right, but once he garbs them in old clothes and jams a hat on their featureless plastic head, you could easily mistake them for a real person. Especially from a distance, or when he had put up a new one somewhere unexpected. He got a kick out of how much I hated them. He loved seeing me jump before I realized what they were. It got even worse when he found a load of old creepy wooden masks dumped at the tip in a metal box. Each mannequin now had a brand new face. A snarling wolf, a yellow-eyed cat, a rooster with an angry curve to its beak, and more. I was mortified when I saw them, the day before I was going to stay at the farm by myself. Adam was showing me the chores I would need to do, and kept cracking up laughing every time we rounded a corner and I jumped. Red was tearing around in circles with us, and at one point, he ran over to the wolf mannequin and started tugging at its trouser leg. It made the mannequin wobble in a disturbingly lifelike fashion, and I quickly walked past it. Its limbs were stuck out, at awkward, unnatural angles, and its head sat at a tilt, like it was politely listening. All the while the mask frozen, in a wolf's evil grin. Gesturing behind me with a thumb, I asked, "How do you sleep at night?" This unsurprisingly provoked another chuckle.
You get used to it pretty quick. I don't even notice them anymore.
It is so much worse with the masks on. They really do look like people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like a group of deranged serial killers could take their place, and wait till nightfall and you wouldn't even notice.
I shoved him as he cackled. "Fuck you. Do you want me to bail out of this?" We heard a strangled yelp, and Adam stopped laughing immediately. The dog had fallen behind at the wolf mannequin.
"Red,"
Adam called. Then again.
"Red."
We hurried back the way we came, and Red met us, slinking along, ears back, tail between his hind legs. Adam knelt down and checked him all over. He seemed okay, but flinched when Adam ran his hand over his right flank.
"Seems all right,"
Adam muttered.
"Probably a bee."
I nodded and gave Red a good scratch under his chin, but the puppy seemed unnaturally subdued, and stayed that way for the remainder of our walk. He stuck close to Adam, and perhaps I imagined it, but he skirted around the next scarecrow we passed in a rapid trot. I left soon after that, and thought nothing more of it. The following day was hectic at work, and I ended up having to stay late. By the time I hastily packed a bag and picked up some groceries, it was already nightfall. I drove carefully out to the farm in the dark. It was a good 40-minute trek, and there were no streetlights. I almost missed the turnoff to his driveway. Flustered, I decided to park at the back of the house, where Red was penned in a fenced-off area. I figured the poor dog must be frantic, thinking the whole world had abandoned him. I kept my eyes strictly ahead as I drove around the gardens. The last thing I needed was to see one of those eerie figures in the dark. I expected Red to be waiting for me at the gate, but he was nowhere to be seen. I grabbed my bags and let myself in, missing the comforting beams of my headlights. I crept forward cautiously, my eyes adjusting to the gloom, finally finding the puppy waiting anxiously on the doormat. I petted him, but the normally affectionate dog seemed more interested in getting inside than seeing me. He must be starving, I rationalized. I was hours late after all. I filled his bowl, but he ignored it. The house was dark, and all the curtains were closed. Adam must have left at the crack of dawn. Red's anxious mood was starting to rub off on me, and I hastily started flicking on lights. We both jumped when my phone rang. It was Adam. I had to keep standing in different spots to try and find the best reception.
Everything okay so far?
He asked. Yeah. I only just arrived, though. Got held up. Sorry. Red seems skittish. Is that normal?
Could be a storm coming you don't hear yet. He hates thunder.
A storm? Seriously? Did you actually organize that to try to freak me out? Typical. I exhaled loudly.
If only my powers stretched that far. You'll be alright, though. Call me if you need anything.
He was serious now, his voice sincere. Will do. Talk to you later.
Have a good night. Don't let the scarecrows bite.
He couldn't resist one last dig and hung up laughing. Bastard. I found Red, already curled in his basket, and petted him for a while until he went to sleep. Feeling the long day catching up with me, I turned on the oven and heated up some casserole Adam had left, showering quickly while the meal warmed. I got into my pajamas, then channel surfed while I ate. With nothing interesting on and my food eaten, I couldn't help but submit to the creeping tiredness that was making my eyes droop. I fell asleep, curled in the armchair, remote still dangling from my hand. Abruptly, I jolted awake. It must have been several hours later. Red was nudging my leg with his cold nose, whining frantically. It was pitch black, and I heard a low roll of thunder nearby. I had fallen asleep with the lights on. The power must have gone out in the storm. An instant later, the room was illuminated in shades of gray and white, with a flash of lightning. I shushed the anxious dog, stroking his head, but he wouldn't be calmed. The claps of thunder seemed to be getting closer and closer to the house. Generally, storms don't bother me, but my heart was racing nearly as fast as Red's, and I sat tense and waiting for each new assault of noise. It was only because I was listening so intently that I heard the shuffling. Something moving, outside on the veranda. I froze. It's an animal. I tried to convince myself, trying to find shelter from the storm, but it sounded big. I was shaking in fear now, but even so, was simultaneously chastising myself for being ridiculous. I forced myself out of the chair and marched to the nearest window, close to where the sound was coming from. Wrenching the curtains open, I screamed and stumbled backwards as one of Adam's scarecrows peered inside. Red started barking frantically. I stared at the mannequin in horror. A flash of lightning illuminated the yellow of the cat's wide eyes, making it seem as surprised to see me as I was to see it. I was furious. I knew Adam liked pulling pranks, but this was way, way too far to go, and I was doing him a favor. He must have dragged the damn thing up to the window, knowing I would get a shock when I pulled open the curtains. Sure, he probably expected me to arrive in daylight and not have this encounter in the middle of the night during a storm, but it was still mean-spirited. Stomping to the front door, I had every intention of walking around to that side of the house and knocking the mannequin over. I was not, under any circumstances, going to let myself have the same shock the next morning. And Adam, finding his precious scarecrow knocked into the dirt, hopefully broken, would illustrate perfectly how I felt about his stupid little prank. I pulled the front door open and was greeted by two more of the scarecrows. One mannequin was pressed right up against the screen door, while the other had been stood further back. A monkey and a bear, faces frozen in perpetual grimacing smiles. I screamed again, and then spat out Adam's name like a curse. This was too much. I slammed the door shut, slung my bag over my shoulder, and scooped Red into my arms. Exiting through the back door, I ran to the car, or at least moved as quickly as I could with a writhing puppy in my arms. I opened a back door, all but threw poor Red inside, and then raced around to jump into the driver's seat. The headlights flared on with the ignition, and my breath caught in my throat. At the furthest reach of the light's edge, I could see another figure. How did I miss this when I arrived? Another flash of lightning illuminating the jagged teeth of the smiling wolf mask. I felt a different kind of electricity run down my spine, sending the hairs on my arms shooting upright, and making the blood pump heavy and thick through my veins. White hot, then ice cold. Red started barking from the back seat. I put the car into drive and accelerated straight at the damn thing. It rattled off the bumper with a satisfying thunk. I realized too late the stupidity of what I was doing, worried that it would fly up and hit my windshield, but luckily it got pulled straight under the car. I reversed, hearing plastic crunch under the wheels. I spun the car around and ran over the edge of a garden bed. When I had rounded the house and was nearly back on the driveway out, I hit the brakes. Looking over my shoulder, I could see the house, the window where I had spotted the first mannequin. It stood, exactly as it had once again. A tremendous gust of wind came at that moment. It even made the car rock. As I watched, it must have caught the mannequin at the right angle, because it pivoted on the spot, then lurched forward like it was coming towards me. That was enough. I left, drove too fast in the pitch black back to my house in town, crying the whole way without knowing why, feeling stupid and despising Adam. Back at home, Red and I both curled up on top of my bed and went to sleep. We were woken late morning by my phone ringing.
Hey, it's Adam. How'd it go last night? Any damage to the property in the storm?
Fuck if I know. Real funny, dickhead.
What the hell?
I don't care if your whole garden dies. Just letting you know you can pick your dog up from my place when you get back.
What? You aren't even out there?
I'm not even going to lie for the sake of pride, Adam. The mannequin at the window scared the life out of me. It was too much. Too far this time. I was so tired and angry, I wondered if I was going to cry over the phone. I hoped not.
What? I don't understand. I really don't. I put all the scarecrows in the shed after you left the other day. I didn't want you freaked out when you were alone.
I was silent for a long time, and eventually he tried again.
Seriously, I don't understand. What happened?
I explained briefly. It sounded like he didn't believe me, or just thought I was plain crazy. But he could tell I was genuinely scared, and wouldn't be staying at the farm alone again. Here is how I see it. Either Adam was covering his ass about the prank when he realized how upset I was, or someone else set them up to freak either him or me out. I can't really bring myself to comprehend any other possibilities. Adam came home that day and went straight to the farm. I met him there soon after. We were greeted by a bloody mess. His 2 sheep had been slaughtered, torn apart by an animal. His chickens had been killed, but not eaten. Perhaps some farm dogs gone feral. The scarecrow mannequins were all in the shed. All but one. The one I ran over.
I'm pretty sure that isn't how I left them arranged.
Adam told me. I stood silent.
You didn't?
No, I replied. He threw the scarecrows on a bonfire, clothes, masks, and all. He even picked up the shattered pieces of the one I ran over and burned them too. But he still hasn't found that wolf mask as far as I know. It must have been flung into the garden at the point of impact. Shame we couldn't burn that too. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story, or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description.
Be good to animals, even people. Sip.
Ja, snämmar, Bergsbus, Hirsch.
It's so hot here. Watch, let me show you. I'm gonna spit outside. Crazy, huh?